Great. Welcome to Grit Meets Growth. Today we're joined by Jeff, a dedicated fitness trainer helping people achieve their health and fitness goals. We're excited to dive into Jeff's journey and learn from his expertise. So, welcome, Jeff. Thanks a lot for agreeing for the invitation and doing this. Excited about the talk that we're going to have.
My pleasure, Manav. Thank you for having me as a guest.
So, cool. Then we'll just start with that, and obviously we'll start with the first question, which is how did you like when you were thinking about doing thing, how did you decide that fitness is a space that you want to go in? And then how did you decide that, okay, this is what you want to do for the next part of your life?
So, I was a radio announcer starting all the way back in high school, secondary school. I always loved radio. And so I was on the air as a DJ, disc jockey, playing music. And then as I got a little older, I started reporting on the news and sports and doing traffic reports on the radio. Um, and sitting in studios like we are now with microphones and things was, I didn't get a lot of activity, physical activity. So I gained weight and got weak. I didn't eat healthy, all of that to go along with it. So around the time I turned 40, my wife and I joined a gym and we hired a personal trainer to try to get in shape for the new year, which is kind of about the time we are now, recording this. And I really liked it. It was something, different than I had done. I didn't really play sports or anything in school. So, I lost the extra weight that I had, got strong, felt really good, had a lot of energy. Um, I was still on the radio, and I did this for a couple of years, and then my trainer moved away. I stopped going to the gym as much because I didn't have that accountability, started eating bad again, wasn't watching my weight, gained pretty much all the weight back again, a few years after I had gotten into such good shape. So I got mad at myself, for letting that happen again. So I found my trainer again, started seeing him, started to get back in shape a second time. And that's when I decided I wanted to earn a personal training certification and gain the knowledge so I could really take care of myself instead of having to rely on my trainer, who I still stay good friends with and who was a big influence in my life. But I said, I need to have all this knowledge myself. And of course, then I wanted to share the knowledge and help other people, get in shape just like I had. And by this time, I was in my mid 50s. I'm now 64, Manav. And so I didn't really see myself training young people, people your age, especially guys that want to, get really big and big chest and big biceps. And, I was so much older than them. And when I was working with my trainer, there was a trainer at the gym there who was 72 years old, and he trained the seniors at the gym. And I thought, that's probably where my niche lies as well for training. And I got along really well with the older folks. They were really nice to work with, and so I just kind of moved into that space. I was training at a gym, and they knew my temperament, and because of my age, I was twice as old as the next closest trainer was, the next oldest. So they started putting older people on my schedule. When they would come in, they'd assign them to me. And that's kind of how I just got off and running. And then when COVID hit and my radio job went away, I just went to training full time. Then, as when the gyms reopened after COVID started to die down. So I've been a trainer for about 9.5 years, and full time for about 2 or 3 years now. About 3 years.
Perfect.
So that's how I wound up here.
That's an interesting story, right? Like you come with a ton of experience from a particular field and then like switching a particular field to something different. can be challenging. Like obviously there would have been anxious moments, moments of not being clear, like is that what you want to do? But then obviously like once you are like, okay, this is what I want to do, then you have to do it, sort of a thing. So I guess that's really endearing and especially I guess like switching careers or switching fields is anytime tough, but let's say with a lot more experiences, it gets tougher um in comparison to someone who has like maybe spent a couple of years in one field and then wants to switch. So that can be, but then like once you do it, you really understand things and then you're like, okay, this is something that I can do. That's really inspiring for a lot of people that are going to say this, that it depends on your mental sort of conditioning or mental strength that you get. Like once you decide that you can do something, you can definitely do it. It doesn't really matter about your circumstances, your age, or things like that. So that's amazing to learn.
I was like 59 and a half, almost 60 years old when I changed careers. And then we also moved from Los Angeles to San Diego here in California. So it was starting over quite a bit. And, on the business side, I, when I was on the radio, I was an employee. I worked for other people. So I just came in and did my 4 or 5 hour show or however long it was. And, and I answered to the boss. But of course, now being a small business owner, I have to do all of these other things that I never, really had to do before. The marketing and the, the paying the bills and finding clients and all of that stuff. So, it was more than just going from being on the radio to being a personal trainer. All of a sudden, I had to do a lot of things I didn't really know how to do and hadn't done before. So that
Yeah,
was maybe the bigger shock to the system, I think, was kind of
yeah,
the different responsibilities I have as a small business owner.
yeah, true, true. Great, right? Like, I guess I know a couple of challenges that you already talked about, but what were the biggest challenges that you faced on this journey, and how did you sort of figure them out or like maybe overcame them?
Yes. So I so I did hire a business coach. I got invited to a free webinar, and they just specialize in personal trainers and gym owners and things like that. So they fortunately did a good job of, when I saw the presentation and they're like, we'll help you with your social media that posts, the types of posts you should be doing. We'll help you with your sales process, your sales script, qualifying, finding people, qualifying them for your price, and then bringing them in for a consultation, overcoming the objections, which is, a big thing because personal training is rather expensive. um, and then closing them and getting them to sign the contract and getting their credit card numbers so you can auto bill them and all of that. So those were all big challenges, and they showed how they were going to walk me through it. And I said, I need help on doing all of that stuff. It was much more complicated than I was even thinking from the outside.
Yeah,
So, the sales process is probably the biggest thing, finding somebody, qualifying them, asking them about your price and if they can afford it before you even try to sign them up, So, and then the sales actual script and going through and leading them, down the path to where, they realize they need your help, enough that they're willing to commit their hard-earned money to do it. So, getting over the kind of fear of sales and trying to sell somebody and to get them to sign a contract, that was probably the most difficult. And fortunately, with my business coach, they actually have role-playing sessions like every week where someone pretends that, well, someone is the trainer and someone pretends that they're a prospect thinking about personal training. So you go through the role playing, find out what their objections are, and try to answer them in a way that's going to lead them to the next step. So
yeah,
the sales process would probably be the hardest, and it really helped doing the role playing because you kind of come up with during the role playing, pretty much most of the excuses and the objections that people come up with. Oh, I have to ask my husband. Oh, is it going to work? Oh, just all of these things. Oh, that's a lot of money. I know other trainers will do it for cheaper. So just really good to just practice those so you feel comfortable and confident. And now instead of like being afraid that they're going to ask me these questions, it's like I'm ready. It's like, go ahead and ask me because I've got a good answer for you. And that's going to lead them down the path. And then finally the thing that the business coaches tried to instill in you, that sales isn't something like sleazy. Sales is fulfilling a need that they have. You have a solution for their problem. Let them know about your solution and how you can solve their problem. And somebody's like, wow, okay, that's what I needed to find. That's what I needed to hear.
Makes sense. Perfect, right? So these definitely like the biggest sort of a takeaway is like get in the right sort of people that can help you with things that you are not obviously aware about, because then as a business you will always like again, right? Like you can't really know everything. So therefore, bring in people wherever they can help you get things done faster, better, um, and then just make you the best sort of a version of yourself, that sort of a way. So yeah, that's cool. Cool, right? Like we obviously talked about challenges when we talked about how you chose the journey as well as the path. But now we'll talk about some of the numbers things, and therefore, like I'll start with the first thing, which is when it comes to your business, right? What are the different channels that are bringing in clients or let's say revenue for you? Which can be, let's say, BNI. Obviously, we'll talk about BNI in the next question, but what are the different channels so that anyone who is starting their own business, especially in the as a personal trainer, knows that these are the areas that they need to focus, which can help them get those businesses.
So my business coach recommended BNI. I had never heard of Business Networking International before. And when he was starting his own gym before he went into coaching trainers to grow their own business, he had joined it and said it really helped. And like I said, I didn't know anything about it. I'd never heard of it. And right about that time, we were moving from Los Angeles to San Diego. So I was coming to a whole different city and a market to and so I didn't really know many people. I'd lived in San Diego many years before. So all of a sudden, I'm like in a new city. How do I find people? So I joined the BNI chapter that did not have a personal trainer. Most of them do because it's really good for personal trainers. It really helps bring in the business. Almost every client I have here in San Diego, except for maybe one or two, are from BNI referrals or actual BNI members themselves. So it was huge. It still is the number one way I get clients. I'm also in a couple of other networking groups of doctors. So doctors to try to show doctors how if they have somebody, especially older, that's weak and has poor balance, that I can help them. And so I now have had 3 doctors, different ones that have referred at least one, and one doctor like 6 clients of their patients to me, saying you really need to work with Jeff. And now that the doctors have heard back from their patients how much stronger they feel and how much they like working with me, the doctors now feel much more confident in
Confident,
referring
yeah.
me to their patients to me. Um, so that's really the number one way, either BNI or other networking groups. Quickly, one of my BNI people in my chapter, when I first joined, said, don't just run around and look for one client at a time. Try to find people that can send you a steady stream of clients. And so that's when I focused on doctors, especially ones that had a lot of patients that were seniors, and then prove to them that I can get results for their people safely. So that's been the number one. My business coach also supports a lot of social media posts, but for my clients, that hasn't really been return people. The older folks may be less active on social media, more on Facebook, but less on like Instagram and
Yeah,
TikTok and things
true.
like that. So it hasn't really been a way. I still post. It's good for people maybe that are thinking about me, that if they see me online or, see
Yeah.
some of my feeds, I have videos of me working with clients. So it's maybe kind of a reaffirms what I do, but it's not a way
Yeah.
of for me to bring in clients. So that's something maybe it's just with because of who my target audience is, but I don't know. So, good luck to other trainers for doing that and just being visible, and then network where do people in your demographic, your ideal demographic, what do they do and where do they go? And try to get into those areas and meet with them that way. So those would be my suggestions.
Got it. So, again, right, like when it comes to training or let's say trainers, as you mentioned, there are lots of people that obviously are becoming trainers because it's a great field to be in. A lot of people are now looking to be healthy and therefore they need more and more trainers. So, what is that thing that you brought in which was different that helped you maybe stand out from, let's say, the rest of the folks? Obviously, right? Like it's not like anyone is completely different, but then there would be some differentiations that you would have brought in, right? So, what were those?
So another going back to my business coach, because I didn't know so much when I started, but they recommend that you have a, a niche, a very defined target audience. When I first started training, I said, "Oh, I'll train anyone from 17 years old to 70 years old," because you don't want to miss anyone that could be a potential client. But the trouble is everybody wants to train everybody. One of the phrases I hear is like, if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're
Yeah,
nothing
no,
to no one or nothing to everyone, type of thing. So the more you define who your audience is, all of a sudden you can stand out, because I'm really one of only a couple of trainers that say I work with women in their 60s, 70s, 80s, helping them get strong to fight osteoporosis and helping them improve their balance. Very few people are just trying to drive home that niche. So it's easier to own when you want a very small sliver of the population. They say, try to be number one in your niche. If I was just going to be a trainer of anyone, there's hundreds of trainers and gyms in San Diego, if not thousands. But there's no one really is promoting very well the fact that they train seniors. So I get people all the time going, "Oh my gosh, I love that you have such a defined target audience. And now I know my elderly parents need to work with you," or something like that. It really helps them define who they can promote you to, and who you work with a lot more. You say, think of anything. Well, you don't think of anything, you go, think, think of seniors in strength training. It's like, oh, like I said, my elderly parents or my next door neighbor, has fallen and needs somebody to help them with their balance. So having a very specific niche, age group, even gender. So I specialize in women. I do train some men, but I go after the older women. They're more likely to actually do the training, just like the yoga and Pilates classes, usually filled with a lot more women than men. So that's who I go after as well. So that's probably my biggest thing is really be specific on who you go after and what their biggest problem is, or a couple of their biggest problems, and how you solve them. So spell it out. Like, oh, if you have poor balance, we're going to work on leg strength and we're going to work on foot coordination so you don't trip, or something like that, that they can say, oh, okay, he has a plan, as opposed to, trust me, I'll help you. So, point out the problem they have. They may not even realize it and go, oh, yeah, you're right. I have trouble walking up and down stairs. Yeah. Oh, you can help me do that. We practice that kind of stuff. Okay. So they're a lot more likely to actually sign.
Makes sense. That makes sense, right? Like, I guess defining niche is becoming like more and more important, especially in the competitive sort of a world that we live in. That is very true with almost like every business unless there's no competition that they have. So yeah, like that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, like the way that you're doing it is a great sort of a testimony that anyone that is looking to start something needs to define the target audience, the niche, like to the core, because that's one thing that I even learned in BNI that be as specific as you can. Because if you're not specific, then you're, you're not really reaching out to anyone, which is a fact, right? Like at times we're like, if we'll define a niche, we'll miss out on like hundreds of other categories, right? But you're not really going to even serve 100 categories anyway. So it's better to just define it and then be like, okay, I'm the best with this. And see, they can still be, like you mentioned, right? You specifically look out for females because that's where you feel that you can maybe add more value or maybe they are more consistent, but you still do males, which can be a few. So it's not like anyone won't really reach out to you because they still can, but you're defining a category which basically tells that if you are a woman of, let's say, 65, you need to go to Jeff,
Yeah,
which is sort of very clear. Instead of like there are 1,000 people, 1,000 trainers, you just specified that Jeff is the one that specifically works with women for like that are more than 60 or particular age. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we as marketers, this is something that we specifically focus on because at the end of it, that's what our job is. And like defining our targeting or target audience is essential, or let's say the biggest sort of a thing for us. So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
great. So yeah, the final thing, and Dr. Meisner talks about it in some of his podcasts about having a network instead of having a mile wide and an inch deep, so you know a whole bunch of people, but you only have had minimum contact with them. It's much better to have your network narrower but very deep, where you have deep, long relationships and close relationships with a fewer number of people, but they're more likely to to refer you. So just like your target audience, instead of being I'll take anybody, but now I'm only scratching the surface and I can't hunt everybody down. If you're very have a narrow target audience, but go really deep and know everything about them, solve their problems specifically. So yeah, you can kind of tie that that demographic marketing in with your networking as well as who you're trying to get as clients.
Makes sense. Perfect. So we're almost on the last two questions. The second last being, what is it one advice that you would like to give anyone who is looking to start their own business?
Um, I would say ask for help, from people that have been there and know. So that's usually paying a coach. I know some people have a couple of different coaches. They may have a social media manager and a business strategy coach, somebody to help you, define your audience and your processes. On that note, the book I really like, and I know a couple of other people in my BNI chapter have looked at it. Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited, and he talks about systemizing everything so you don't have to be the one doing everything all the time. If you have a system, you can train people to work the system, you can take time off, or you can do more important things and not just get caught up in the little stuff, that you can hire somebody to help take off your plate so you can go for the bigger picture and grow your business. So those are a couple of big suggestions I have. And I'm working on the systemizing everything because I'm at the point where I need to hire somebody, and it's not going to just be me doing everything now. I'm getting busy that I'll need to hire a trainer or two to
Mm,
take the excess. So I
That's
don't
a
want to
good
be,
problem to
stuck
have.
doing 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, working in my business, So think about, okay, you don't want to be trapped by your business. You want to manage your business. So trying to position yourself that way and put yourself in that position so you can do that.
Makes sense. But like that's a good problem to have that you want to hire more people so that they can take things from your plate. So yeah, like that, and that totally makes sense, right? That getting in the right set of people, having um, them on places where they can add more value than you. It's always better to do that. At the same time, like reading through some important books is like a must sort of a thing at these days. Like again, right, like it doesn't really matter if you're reading it, if you are hearing the audio book or if you're hearing a podcast, as long as you're getting the right information, that is definitely going to help you. Cool. So we are under the last segment where what we do is we are going to ask you one question that we got from, let's say, some of the last guests, and we'll obviously ask you one question that we'll ask to the next guest, right? So the question that I have for you is, um, how can you tell the people who are going to start a new business to plan for growth?
Plan for growth. Um, I guess, the systemizing the things that you do, how do you find leads? How do you maybe onboard a new client? Those things are real important. So, writing down how you do all of that step by step helps you clarify in your own mind, and maybe you find where you have problems. Oh, okay, I'm missing something in my onboarding. I need to add this paperwork, or I need to tell them this, or I need to get this information from them. Um, and then you can coach that, train new people that you bring in to do that system so you can get away. So that's probably the biggest thing I'm kind of doing right now and working on. So that comes to mind for me to tell you and tell other new business owners.
That makes sense, right? Like I guess like after a particular time or like scaling beyond a certain level, you need to have those processes, you need to have those people, and therefore that is really essential. So I can agree to that completely, and that's a great sort of an advice for anyone that is looking to grow their business, because there are times as a business that you face that okay, you are sort of maybe not able to grow more, um, and therefore like I guess it is very different for every business, because every business can have different sort of challenges, like why they are not growing. Maybe they're not able to bring in right people. Maybe they're not able to build in a process. Maybe they're into a manufacturing sort of thing and they're not able to figure out, let's say, different products. So it can be different, but then having a solid process at the top really helps in a lot of those things. So yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So we got the answer from you. What we would now like to have that question that we want to ask the next guest.
I would ask them, uh, what are you doing to uh, improve your knowledge of entrepreneurship, and how are you doing things that are going to help you get prepared for opening your business? And a lot of that is gaining knowledge or finding a mentor or something like that. Now, I won't answer the question for them, but part of it is like, what are you doing to move into that role and to be a very, productive uh, new business owner? So how are you preparing yourself,
For
and
sure.
learning the new skills, that you're going to need?
Thanks a lot for sharing that question. So we have that noted down, and that will be the question for the next guest. But just thanks a lot for doing this. I loved this session. It was quite insightful. There are a lot of things that anyone can take and sort of take those as learnings before they're looking to start their own business. So thanks a lot for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Manav, and I appreciate the chance to talk to your viewers of your podcast and the listeners.
For sure.